welcome to Soul of Travel podcast. I'm very excited today to be joined by Jo Swann, and she is the founder of Adventures in Borneo, or Downbelow Marine and Wildlife Adventures. And we connected, we were just reminiscing a little over a year ago in Switzerland at the Adventure Travel Trade Summit. And I'm so excited to be able to have a longer conversation than our 15-minute like micro networking session that we had, even though in that amount of time we really had such a great connection, and I think realized right away that we had some very shared passions about travel and what we thought travel could do for others and for the world. So I can't wait to get into that. Jo, thank you for joining me.
Thanks very much, Christine. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. You're an inspiration for sure.
Well, thank you so much. I would say likewise. So, well, as we start the conversation, I'd love to just turn it over to you and give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and tell my listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you do in the space of travel right now.
Sure, thank you. So yeah, my name's Jo Swann and I'm originally from the UK. I now live in Borneo. We're in the state of Sabah in Malaysia, and we've been here for 18 years. My husband and I founded the umbrella company Downbelow Marine and Wildlife Adventures. Very long name for a company. And within that brand, we're a destination management company. So we work with travel brands, universities, schools, mainly B2B. And we offer airport to airport itineraries for those groups. But underneath that brand, we have Adventures in Borneo. We kind of simplified it to make it a little bit more specific to say what we actually do. And also Dive Down Below, which is our PADI 5-star career development center. And yeah, all of that is based here in Sabah. So we're an inbound tour operator.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into diving in just a minute. But when I first looked at your website, I was like, oh, this is like a kid in a candy store. You have so many things. I don't know that I've ever popped onto somebody's website and seen such a comprehensive like list of experiences and education on one website, but we'll get there later. But that was one thing I was really surprised by when I was kind of learning more about the work that you do. But I would love to kind of get to know you as a traveler and learn more about what drew you into travel initially and even into diving, and then maybe we can understand how that led you on your path to Borneo.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So I think from a very early age, freedom has always popped up in my life. And I think that what freedom looks like to me is the ability to just get up and go somewhere and, travel. So from a very early age, I was fascinated by other parts of the world. And I think I've learned that through reflection, because I'm not sure that there was a single episode or something that sparked a desire to travel. My family are not great explorers or adventurers. My grandma's sister had a yacht, and in my mind, she traveled the world's oceans. I don't know if she actually did, but that's what was planted in my mind from an early age. But yeah, I think travel is just the ultimate freedom. So that's probably what inspired me.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that is a word that I think would resonate with so many of my guests, and really so many people that have, that wanderlust or that sense of exploration. It's maybe not even so much about the going somewhere, but like you said, that freedom or that space that you need to feel around you, or the ability to be able to just move into a new space or way of being, like there's something really important about freedom as a value for, I think,
Yeah.
entrepreneurs and travelers. Like we all kind of gravitate towards those things because it nurses that need within us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's innate. I think freedom is something, you know, we all desire, whether we're conscious of it or not. But like you said, you don't, it's space as well.
Mhm.
It's that space. And even if you don't travel far, you can also travel in your mind. You know, your imagination can travel to so many places. So yeah, I think the whole thing is like based around that freedom.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And even as you were just kind of talking about freedom, I was imagining imagination. That's that is another, I think, characteristic of a lot of people that are
Mhm.
maybe tuned into that sense of freedom, or they find meditation or yoga or other healing modalities because it feels like it kind of breaks you out of any confines of
Yeah.
like normal routines or expectations. And so I think,
Yeah.
again, like that value of freedom maybe is aligned with so many other sort of seeking behaviors or
Yeah.
curiosities about different ways of being. um,
Yeah.
I would love to kind of then learn how you discovered diving, because I think that's in and of itself is a whole nother like set of imagination and freedom and discovery.
Yeah. Yeah. Diving, that's also interesting because I was never a strong swimmer. At school, we used to have to go swimming once a week, and I really didn't enjoy it. Um, but then I guess it was mid 90s. I'm aging myself now. So mid 90s, I decided that maybe I wasn't so comfortable on the top of the water. Let's try going beneath and see what happens down there. So I took my first breaths underwater in a swimming pool. It was about 1995. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. We literally just had a tank on our back, strapped to our backs and submerged. But then it wasn't until the year 2000 that I actually became a qualified diver. Again, and this was in the UK, freezing cold. It was Raisbury Lake. We would get excited about seeing the American crayfish as opposed to the UK crayfish. Just one. There was nothing to see. But yeah, I loved it. And I just found my comfort underwater. I love the sound of the bubbles. I find that so calming to hear my exhalation in the form of bubbles. And I went on, so the year 2000, I got my license, and then I just went on. And I became an instructor in 2001. And we started our company Downbelow in the year 2000. And at that time, it was just called Downbelow. And if you Google Downbelow, you get some quite different things. And yeah, and then so we were based in the UK at the beginning, and we started outbound travel, and it was outbound dive travel. And that took us all over the world, to the Maldives, to Australia, Egypt. And then we stumbled across Sabah. And then we decided that we loved Sabah. It just had so much to offer in terms of adventure and wildlife. Everything was in one small state. And of course, we have Sipadan Island here, which is world class. The drop off, we could literally, our hut was on the beach, and we could literally roll out of bed onto a 600-meter wall and see hammerheads. That was just incredible. And the other end of the island slopes to 3,000 meters. Sipadan is an underwater volcano. So yeah, having experienced that, in the early 2000s. I was hooked, just hooked. And now, yeah, diving is just, it's kind of like one of the ultimate meditations, because you're so immersed in nature with the sound of the bubbles of your breath. And yeah, it's beautiful. It's another world. Yeah.
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 When I first experienced diving, it was was secondhand, but my parents were certified as divers, and I grew up in Montana, and they would practice initially like in the lake near where I lived, which was a cold, dark lake. So I could relate to that. And I thought I would go under there with my eyes open, and I'm like, what are they even seeing down here? This is crazy.
Yeah.
And then eventually they were diving in Belize, which is where I got certified. Um,
Beautiful.
and
Mm.
and then I understood, right? And
Yeah.
it's kind of one of those places you wish you didn't start there, because you're pretty spoiled when that happens.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as you were explaining that, rolling out of bed to that wall, all I can see is like my parents, and they would be in complete and utter heaven at that
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, I mean, incredible. And because Sipadan, we can still dive on Sipadan, around the corals of Sipadan. It's world class, but you can't stay there anymore. So we were so fortunate to be able to, those few years that you could actually stay there, and it was incredible experience. And we kind of knew it as well. It wasn't something that we took for granted. We knew it was special. So yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. So then you landed there, and you experienced the diving, and you already were running, trips one direction. What told you to kind of flip it and make Borneo
Yeah.
your home base?
Yeah. So we were, based in the UK, outbound travel, and we would go to different parts of the world for different things. So whitewater rafting at the time was actually in Nepal. Wildlife was in Africa. Um, the beaches were in the Maldives. Diving was in the Maldives. And then we came to Sabah. And actually, it was just my husband and I en route. We were traveling from the Maldives to Melbourne, Australia. And we kind of looked at the map and went, where shall we go? Sipadan. And when we first came here, in fact, I've written a couple of articles about this, but when we first came here, I didn't know these beautiful islands outside my window even existed, because the rain was torrential. There was a massive storm. And if you had told me I think it was 2001, that I would one day be living here, I would say no chance, no chance. But we returned a few times because we loved it so much. And then we realized we have the wildlife here. We have the mountain here. We have the ocean here. We have the whitewater rafting here. We have nature. We've got jungle. There's everything in one small state of Sabah, that you can visit all these places within a 10-day itinerary. And so we said, you know what, let's bring our company here. So for a period of time, we were running from here and the UK. And we decided to give ourselves 18 months to set up the company here. And then the plan was we would 6 months here, 6 months in the UK. But in 2005, we didn't want to dive in the lakes of Raspberry anymore. And we said, no, we'll let that one go, the UK company go, and we'll focus all of our attention here. So we officially registered the company here in 2008. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Well, and I think one of the things when we first met, I knew a little bit about Borneo, not a lot. I had, some images in my mind of the wildlife, and mountains. So this was the preconceived notion I guess I had. But I also didn't realize, what a wealth of experiences. Like you said, we're in such a small place, and to be able to bring travelers and have them experience so many things in such a short amount of time. You know, one is obviously very convenient for our travelers, but also you don't have to be traveling as many places to have so many types of experiences, which I think now is really important. Um,
Yeah.
and then we'll get into a little bit later talking, you know, more about travel as a tool for growth and transformation. But when you have all those environments, you can
Yeah.
actually then really create something to move travelers through such a profound experience because they are being exposed and learning about so many different things in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
So I like I'm fully on board with wanting to come and experience it myself, but I'm just it seems almost mystical or
Yeah.
impossible, improbable that such a place can exist.
Right. I mean, you're so right. And even I've just returned from 10 weeks in Europe, and I just landed a couple of days ago. And, you know, I've been living here for 18 years. We've been visiting for 23 years. So I should be used to the place. But I landed, it was nighttime. I woke up the next day. I looked out and went, wow, 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 wow. You know, it is mystical, unbelievable. The contrast of colors, you know, the blues, the greens, the whites. It's it's um it's like an HDD screen. Yeah, it is. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know we talked a little bit about diving already, but one, I want to talk about why it was important to you to set up such, you know, a vast educational program. I know I mentioned kind of being in awe of what you've created there. So why that aspect was so important, not just bringing divers to experience, but offering
Mm.
all of that. And then also we talked a little bit about how kind of immersive the experience of diving is, but how do you think that allows travelers to connect more deeply when they are visiting Borneo?
I think that we protect what we love what we understand, and we understand what we're educated about. And I think there's no better way to be educated to environmental and wildlife challenges, animal welfare challenges, than to actually experience it. And, you know, we're overwhelmed right now with everyone telling us what we should do, what we shouldn't do, how we should live, how we should travel. And we wanted to just simplify it a little bit and say, you know, we can't do everything, but we can actually make an impact around where we are. So education was big for us because we really see the difference in the ocean. It's magnified by decades: coral bleaching, ocean plastics, fishing nets, and the depletion of marine life. We've seen that hugely just in the 20 plus years that we've been here. So if we can bring people here and show them what an exceptionally beautiful place this is, above and below the ocean, because we have incredible coral reef here, beautiful soft corals, lots of fish, because this is the Tunku Abdul Rahman Park has been protected since the 70s by the state government. So it's beautiful, but we need to keep it that way. And so if people can see it and, you know, return to the same reef every day and see some of the same marine life and realize they live here, you know, they're actual beings that live here. This is their home, and we can do something to help protect that. That's really impactful. That's impactful. So whether or not we consciously created that, I'm not sure, but it's created from a place of passion, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. That's so beautifully said. And I think that is what so many of us are trying to create, that through line in experiences, and seeing the value that it has when
Mm.
we create that education and that connection and that greater understanding of place when you're traveling, and not just, something to see. I don't mean that by place, but like really being rooted in understanding that it's someone's home or a
Yeah,
animal's home. And
yeah,
like you said, when you witness it over and over, then you even become more aware, and that human side of yourself then becomes invested in this
mm,
place that you've now
yeah,
witnessed in that way. So I love the way that you were sharing about that. And I know that you have also really worked to, over the years, incorporate social enterprise initiatives into your itineraries and focus on, as well, community-based tourism and wildlife conservation. Can you share some examples of those initiatives, and how you think they add value to your travelers, but also how they're supporting the communities?
yeah, yeah, sure. We like to spread the wealth of, the traveler's dollar. And we have a few initiatives. So one program that we started when we established the company was Work for a Career. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to help local people here that didn't have a great education, that don't have the money to spend on becoming a diving instructor. We wanted to give them an opportunity to get a professional qualification. So we came up with this Work for a Career program where local people can apply for it. It's an internship, but it's a paid internship, so they do receive a salary, and the initial period is 2 years, and that takes someone from a non-diver to a PADI dive master. And then once they've successfully completed all those programs, they're invited, if they're suitable for the company and we're suitable for them, they're invited to stay another year and become a PADI instructor. And after that, a number of the candidates in that program have stayed with us and still employed. In fact, our island manager is now a PADI course director, which is the highest level within the PADI system of education. And other people have gone to travel the world. One of our instructors went to work for one of the big shows in Macau as one of their underwater diving safety team, and others have gone to the Maldives. So that's really extremely rewarding, and it's my husband's passion project. He's a PADI course director, and so he leads that. So that was something that we started very early on. We were one of the first enterprises to have zero plastic within our company, and this was more than 10 years ago. We said we are a zero single-use plastic company because, like I said, we see it in the ocean. And at the time we were kind of a bit woo-woo, and everyone was going, oh, yeah, let's see how you get on with that. But we're really proud of that. In fact, we used to fine anyone, guest or staff member, that would bring a single-use plastic item into the company, and it was like 1 ringgit, which is, I don't know, is that 20 cents or something, but it would go into a pot, and then that would be donated to the animal shelter. But yeah, so single-use plastic is another one. Ghost nets, so we have a program that ghost nets are the big fishing nets, the big trawler nets that get washed up onto the coral reef. And again, my husband created a program to teach people how to safely remove the nets, because obviously you've got certain, dangers with taking sharp objects and entanglement and what have you, and also safely cutting away the animals that are trapped in those nets. And we have a quick response team that we send out to remove the nets, because every minute counts. You know, the sharks, the turtles, you know, everything gets so much marine life can get entangled in those. So yeah, so there are kind of big things. Yeah, so it's plastics, ghost nets, work for a career.
Yeah, thank you. That's such a diverse range, you know, of projects. And I think the thing that I love about that, and this is something that we often talk about on the podcast as well, is people finding something to be invested in that speaks to themselves as travelers. So people coming to see you, you know, one thing might really be of interest to them while another might not be. And it's okay that, you know, one is and one isn't, but that
Yeah,
when you have so many things that you're involved in, you really can engage travelers and employees and community in
yeah,
different ways to get them involved. And I really encourage travelers to kind of do an assessment of what is important to them so that they can actively seek that out when they're traveling. But that's such a great example of how they could find something that would be a match to their interests.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I know you mentioned a little bit earlier too that you really have, you know, a vested interest in animal welfare and a
Mm,
variety of projects. And you mentioned to me, you know, really being wanting to support cats and stray cats and dogs, especially. We were talking a little before we jumped on here about what a role that has played for you in your life. And I mentioned I was just traveling with my kids, and that was something as we traveled, you know, in the US, you don't see stray cats and stray dogs like you
mm,
do in other places that we visited, especially where we were in Greece and where we were in Italy. And they are super animal lovers, and
mm,
they would have had 77 pets if they were allowed to have like taken the ones with them that they were connected to. But I also shared with you that my middle daughter had at one point seen a cat that was injured, and um, her like emotional ability to let go and leave that animal there when we couldn't really do anything was really difficult. And so we really had to talk about how we can support, where we can create change, what we could commit to in our
mm,
own lives with this new awareness to create an impact.
mm.
But I would love to talk to you a little bit about what role that has played in your life and what you've done now to kind of serve that passion in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand your daughter's heartache over that is real. It's real.
Mhm.
I yeah, I've always been drawn to cats. Maybe I was a cat in a past life, but I've always been drawn to cats, wild cats and domesticated cats. And there's this would fill more than an hour itself, but we built a shelter, a cat shelter, and we donated it to SPCA, which is the Sabah protection for prevention of cruelty to animals in Sabah. And then I became involved as a volunteer in 2016. And to this date, I still have an active role there. So as you mentioned, stray cats and dogs are an issue here, and we're not used to seeing it. I didn't even know if I wanted to live here coming from the UK, where animals are part of our family, and we don't see that sort of hardship. At first I thought, gosh, how am I gonna bear this? But then I figured they're better off with me playing a role within their life than not. And I have this phrase, and it's what I live by in this field, and that's: we can't change the world, but we can change someone's world. We can change an individual's world. And if we just do that time and time and time and time again, then it makes a huge difference. And so, yeah, we have the cat shelter. We donated that to SPCA, and that was all from company funds. So, you know, company profits, we pile into these passion projects, because the orangutans and the elephants here, they get quite a lot of money, but the stray cats and dogs are not, you know, not so iconic. So they kind of get pushed aside. But yeah, what can people do? Because we do want to help, you know, everyone wants to help. I think to spread the message of adopt, don't shop, wherever you live, you know, even if you live in the UK or the States where you don't see these, you don't see these stray animals, they still exist. You know, shelters are just overrun with unwanted animals. So I still know people that don't have that kind of awareness. They're good people, but they're looking to buy breeds of animals, dogs and cats. And I just think, adopt, don't shop. You know, let's not sustain this trade of animal breeding when we've just got so many animals in shelters. And that's a really powerful message. And what I find is when I explain to my friends and, you know, my family this concept of unwanted animals, they understand, and it just helps, you know, they just shift their perspective. So yeah, that's what we can all do.
Yeah, thank you for sharing about that. And I do think that's one thing, depending on where you're coming from when you travel, like you said, it's something where we haven't seen before, haven't experienced, and don't exactly know what to do. And so I think it's really important to really speak about it and not let it be something that we just say, oh, that's the way things are in this place or that place. You know, and again, also, like you said, we might perhaps not be able to change everything about that circumstance, but we can choose the change that we want to create. And I do think that's important, because even in any change, we'll become overwhelmed and tend to not act if we feel like we have to make this vast change. And so I think it's important.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, when we first met, I would love to kind of jump into the thing that we first really got fired up and talking about, which was a itinerary that you were sharing with me, because you knew that I was really passionate about transformational travel and using travel as a way for people to grow and to heal. And you shared your journey of self-discovery itinerary with me, which I was immediately in love with. So I would love to talk more about this beautiful itinerary and kind of hear how it differs from some of the other things we've been talking about already, and kind of get an understanding about how you envision combining travel with yoga and meditation and breath work and nature and community, which are like all of my very favorite things. So I can't wait to talk about this with you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I remember that. I remember because we'd just launched that journey of self-discovery during COVID. We'd run one of those programs just before, it was like March 2020, and then everything was shut down. And so yeah, journey of self-discovery. So it's a physical and psychological journey. So it's a physical journey because it's a point-to-point itinerary that starts in Kota Kinabalu and takes in all of the wonders of Sabah. So we start at the ocean and we go scuba diving. Then we go into the countryside, into the valleys, and we stay with local people and learn more about their culture. And we see how pineapples are grown, and we cross suspension bridges, and we do a little bit of whitewater rafting. And then we go up into the mountains onto Pineapple Ridge, and we have glorious views of Mount Kinabalu. We do some hiking, swim in the river. And then continuing west to east, we come to the wildlife hub of Sabah. So we go searching for orangutans and elephants and wild cats. And then we finish up in Sandakan, which is on the East Coast, which used to be, it's a historical town. It used to be the capital of Sabah. And now there's some really nice views, ocean views, and some older buildings. Coming from the UK, they're not that old, about 100 years old, but for here it's quite old. So yeah, it's a physical journey, taking in the awe of Sabah, stunning sunrises, stunning sunsets, ocean, mountain, wildlife. But it's also a journey within, because what I did was I based the inward journey around the chakras. And so every day, the classic itinerary is 8 nights, 9 days, but every day is dedicated to one of the chakras. So it could be, the root chakra, so it's all about adventure, or it could be the sacral, about, pleasure. What do you enjoy to do? Are we going to dance? Are we going to scuba dive? Are we going to cooking classes, crafting? And by the end of the journey, so we weave in through this incredible, awe-inspiring journey, we weave in this self-exploration, and we're peeling back the layers that have kind of just been put on us throughout our life, to peel back our true nature. And then at the end, we ask a question. And the question is, who are you? Who are you? Now that you've experienced so much awe, whether that's visual, kinesthetic, or human kindness, what has that revealed within you? And it's incredible. We've organized a few of these itineraries, and they're truly transformational. And it's amazing to be part of it. And what we've started to do now is we've started to work with travel companies who are using the format, the structure of this itinerary, but they're blending in their speciality. So their speciality could be anything from yoga to meditation to breath work to even, we've got a really exciting one we're working on now with an incredible company that looks at, by the end of it, you're encouraged to develop a life vision. Really powerful stuff, where you deep dive into different categories of your life and come up with, how do I actually want to spend my days? What's important to me? So yeah, it's an amazing structure that has lots of flexibility and possibility for creativity within it. So yeah, it's really, really exciting.
I just love it so much. I mean, like I said, it touches to all of my personal travel values, but also, you mentioned the word awe so many times, and I think that's something that is like misunderstood in the value of awe. And again, like, I think it maybe goes right up there with freedom. There's like the awe is what changes your life. There's just something so humanizing about awe. And I feel like this could be its own podcast series, is trying to understand what that is. But when you witness others experiencing awe, you see them like both like come alive and like fall apart at the same time. And it's horrible, but it's the best thing ever.
It's goosebumps, right? It's and I think it's deep. It's a sense, like, the intuition, the sense that's so deep within us, that's there, in all 7.8 billion of us, it's there, but it's layered. There's just so many layers that it's suppressed, you know, and when we are immersed, taken out of our home environment, and you know, we're put in a completely different environment with different people, that awe that we're experiencing it resonates. And yeah, the goosebumps, the emotion, there's no denying it. It's real. Yeah, it's real. And there aren't, you know, often there are just no words.
Mm-hmm.
And the people are just in silence, because we don't have words to express that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but we know. It's a knowing. Yeah. Yeah. And this place was made for it.
Well, as I already was gushing, just as I saw behind your shoulder, for those of you listening, you won't know, but it is awe-inspiring.
I can move. If I move,
Yeah, people can kind of see it.
yeah. Oh, there you go.
There
There's
we
the little
go.
glimpse.
So you'll have to pop over to YouTube so you can see what's behind Joe's shoulder. But I think the other thing too, then, as you mentioned, kind of using the chakra journey as this kind of way to move through, then I think what I love about that so much is a lot of times we have these really powerful experiences in travel, but we don't have a way to integrate them back into our lives. And if you are literally moving through the journey within yourself, one place at a time, you're
Yeah.
kind of automatically building in that integration and that reflection while you're doing that personal exploration. But there's a way to kind of like tap back into that in your own self later.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine that that is also really powerful and then long lasting as well.
Yeah. And actually, that's, you know, that's a great insight that you have, because the transformation takes time. It takes time. And when we return home, you know, we're kind of prediction machines. We go back to what's familiar, and we will default to what's familiar unless we support ongoing change. So a really important part of this program is that it doesn't stop when people go back home, because as we know, home hasn't changed. We've changed, but home hasn't changed. So we have to support people throughout that transition back home, because it'll take time. And then, you know, encourage mentorship. And so many people that have joined us for our itineraries have then gone on to work in, especially the youth groups that come to us, have returned home, and career changes have happened. They've re-educated in another field. So it's, yeah, truly transformational, truly.
Yeah. And I think for me, that's where there's just so much potential and importance in travel. And I think, you know, especially right now and in the past 3 years, there's been so many conversations about, you know, can we still travel? Like you said, what's the right way to travel? How do we ask the questions we need to ask to evaluate what we should be doing moving forward? And I just know that the experience that you've just described and the result of those experiences are really the answers to the questions in the first place. And so I think we can't hold back from sharing these kind of experiences. And I think people that are creating and designing travel now are really understanding this deeper possibility that exists within travel.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate so much this conversation, Jo. It has definitely gone too quickly. I loved learning about your journey. I always am excited to talk about, you know, where we ended in this conversation. Before we go, if people are curious to learn more about the experiences you offer or visiting Borneo, how would be best for them to connect with you, or other businesses that are, inspired by what we've talked about and want to design something for themselves with you?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. I think our website is the hub, the go-to place, downbelowadventures.com. And our Instagram is actually very interesting because they're posting every day live things that are happening, the wildlife that we're seeing, the underwater experiences, and that's adventures_Borneo. That's on Instagram. But from the website, you can also see all of our social links. So yeah, probably those two are the good place. But Instagram's fun. Even I look up, when I was in the UK for 10 weeks, I was following the Instagram. What are they up to today? What are they seeing?
Yeah. Well,
So
yeah,
that's
like you
fun.
said, there's so much that happens on a daily basis that
Yeah,
people are seeing
yeah,
and discovering. Um,
yeah,
Before we go, I have a few rapid fire questions, which I know you're a listener to the podcast, so these won't be
yeah,
a surprise for you.
yeah.
Let's jump into those. The first is, what are you reading right now?
I'm actually so I'm a bookworm. I'm reading The Big Leap by Guy Hendricks. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh, fascinating, amazing. Yeah, I'm reading that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. What is always in your suitcase or backpack when you travel?
My yoga mat, my Hansa yoga mat.
Yes. Oh, and
Yeah.
we didn't even get
Didn't
to
even
talk
talk.
about them yet.
That'll be another
It
podcast.
will be. And they're
Yeah.
beautiful. So I will
Right.
put a link in the show notes because I was just drooling over them actually before we got onto this call. So to sojourn is to travel somewhere as if you live there for a short while. Where is somewhere that you might still like to sojourn?
Portugal. I went there for the first time last month and I love it. And so I'm actually planning to go back next year for maybe a little sojourn.
Yeah, great. Um, who was a person that inspired or encouraged you to set out and explore the world?
That would be Joy Adamson. She was an author, conservationist. She was born, gosh, well, she died, I think, in 1970 or early 1970s, but her work was just tremendous. She wrote the book Born Free, and it was about big cats. So she would rehabilitate big cats in South Africa. And she was just so brave and so bold and just such a woman of nature and adventure and freedom. So yeah, Joy Adamson.
Thank you. I love learning about people that I had forgotten or hadn't heard before. And there's so
Yeah,
many incredible women throughout history who have been
yeah,
great explorers and conservationists and
yeah,
inspirations. I think that's another podcast waiting to be to be discussed.
yeah.
But thank
And
you.
do you know what? Her husband, George, my friend and I wrote to him when we were about 12 years old and just told him what an incredible inspiration him and his wife had been for us. So we hand wrote him a letter to his ranch in South Africa, and he wrote back.
Mm,
He actually, we have a written, he's dead now, but yeah, so not only incredible people, but kind and yeah, so that's special.
that is
Yeah,
really special. Thank you for letting
yeah,
us know that.
yeah.
What do you eat that immediately connects you to a place that you've been?
Mm. Do you know the banana leaf food? Do you have that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So banana leaves, we have two restaurants here that serve the incredible vegetarian and vegan foods literally on a banana leaf. So there's no utensils, there's no plastic, it's all nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I first had that in India in the 90s. And so it's something that I treat myself to here because it's a speciality, but yeah, throws me back to traveling in India in the 90s. Yeah. Love it.
I was just in Mexico City with my daughter, and we went a place that had tacos, and they served them in corn husks, just, as the
Yeah.
plates. And
Yeah.
at first she was like, "This is so unusual." I was like, "Oh, this is so great. I've had
Yes.
stuff in banana leaves, but never in
Yeah.
the corn husk before, besides a tamale, but not just
Yeah.
as the plate."
Yeah.
The next is, if you could take an adventure with one person, fictional or real, alive or past, who would it be?
It would be Mowgli from the Jungle Book. It would, because I remember, and oh my gosh, I don't know how old I was, a kid going to see the Jungle Book, the movie, at the cinema. And Mowgli, well, I just wanted to be Mowgli. That was it, And so I think adventures with Mowgli would be incredible. Yeah.
It might be a lot of trouble, but they would be really
There would be
incredible.
a lot of trouble.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, the last one, solo travel, is for recognizing women in the industry who are creating change. Who is one woman you admire and would love to recognize in this space?
She actually, do you know Sharon Strayed? Do you know the woman? She's not specifically in the travel industry, but she's a change maker. And she wrote a book called Wild about her journey,
Yes.
her
Mhm.
hiking trip.
Yeah.
And that was inspirational for me because I thought, I'm a runner. I used to be a competitive trail runner, and I would be very afraid of being alone on the trails. And there was this woman, Sharon, who hiked. I forget, you might know the name. I always forget the name of the trail, but it took, weeks. And she was alone. And she said, and it wasn't that she wasn't afraid. She was afraid, but she chose to be brave. And when I read her book, I thought, we can choose not to run those stories in our mind. And that was profound for me, because I thought, well, I can also choose not to run stories in my mind and be brave. So she was inspirational, and she continues to be a change maker. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. She's one of my favorite writers, and someone who the universe will someday plop her on the other side of the Zoom screen, I hope. Um,
Well, let me be the observer. Yeah,
um,
she's amazing. Yeah.
yeah, and that moment and that part of the story was definitely something for me. I just remember like feeling huddled there in that tent, thinking I wouldn't
Right.
now, or I would have been done, but to continually choose to be brave.
Yeah.
And it's something, in your business, as an entrepreneur too, there's all these moments where you're like, that is something I haven't yet done before. That is something really intimidating. I'm not sure I'm the
Yeah.
person for that job. And when you own your own business, you are the person for that job. And so,
Yeah.
like, calling on that bravery is something I think
Yeah.
really important. So I love that
Yeah.
you brought that into the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you again so much for being here. I hope we'll have a part two follow up, and I also really hope that we will have a time shared together in Borneo, journeying with a group of travelers, because I think it will be a beautiful, beautiful experience.
Thank you, Christine. I've enjoyed this so much. And yeah, we just scratched the surface, didn't we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
always.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah.